600 undersea volcanoes in the South Pacific alone, and at any given time, a number of those are venting. And there's nobody monitoring it at all. And certainly they're not talking about it as a contributing factor to climate change, and I believe it is one of the single biggest contributing factors. The other is the solar cycle itself, the sun. You know, the sun, if you were actually look at the solar cycle and the temperature gradient of the planet over the last 100 years, in fact, now 120 years, because we've charted this and we've kept track of this historically. And what you see is a direct relationship. The charts go right together all the way through.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
And you're listening to Infowars.com, and this is Dr. Nick Begich in this fourth hour, standing in today and talking about climate change, and the political correctness of that is not going to be for us today. I really want to deal with more of the facts and less of the hype that we hear from so much of the environmental community, the mainstream media. You know, the idea that science sometimes has to follow a political line is really abandoning the basic essence of it from my perspective. And part of that is driven actually by the division within the sciences. You know, so many are now separated rather than combined. You know, when you think of earth sciences as an example, sort of the combined of what's going on under the earth, above the earth, the atmospheric aspects, as well as that which is on terra firma, on the ground. And this is, again, part of what's missing in the equation is this integration of science. Right now, the volcanologists are looking at the Antarctic, as we were talking about just before the break, in terms of volcanics and venting and what it's doing to the western Antarctic as it's melting and accelerating. And I mentioned also in the last segment that the ocean heights have actually increased, according to all the mainstream science reports, 350 feet in 12,000 years. Now I want to bring a couple of other things into this frame. That means that 12,000 years ago, most cultures, most civilizations are along the coast where there's food and seafood and all the things that humans need, as well as temperate climates. Most of the existing cultures of 12,000 years ago are buried, if there were any at all, under 12,000, under 12,000 years of rising sea heights, now 350 feet deeper than it was. That averages 3 feet, approximately, a little less than 3 feet every 100 years. Now, granted, there were periods where it happened really rapidly and periods where it was relatively slow. But overall, again, averages over 12,000 years fit the standard model that the alarmists, the environmental alarmists, are saying, 3 feet in 100 years, oh no, the sky is falling. That's the average that nature has produced over the last 12,000 years. There's nothing new here, nothing new under the sun except the propaganda. And under the sun, that's another misnomer. You know, when you think about ozone depletion, one of the things that they never factor into the equation is every time that a rocket launches through that layer, it deposits particulate material right there where there's an ozone hole created at that moment. When we launched Skylab was when we first observed this back in the 1970s. And they went, oh, no problem. It quickly refilled. Sure, it refilled. The Earth moves, things happen, and it goes away. The hole goes away. But the fact is there's been thousands and thousands of launches since that time, adding to a certainly ozone depletion. But let's talk about greenhouse gases. One of the most powerful greenhouse gases is methane. And methane is being released now by the tons, literal hundreds, thousands of tons of methane gas are released every year by the melting of permafrost, which is a natural occurrence of global warming. Permafrost holds vegetative matter hundreds of feet thick in some cases. It never fully decomposes. And some of it has created methane hydrates, where the methane is partially decomposed plants, and then it's formed into crystals that as temperatures go up, this is released a tremendous amount is released. The bottom of the oceans and the Arctic seas are trillions and trillions of cubic feet of methane in crystalline form. As temperatures rise, these gases are released into the environment and are 20 times more potent than the supposed greenhouse gases that man is contributing. And again, I'll point out, man, according to BBC, only contributes 1 to 3% of those greenhouse gases, and the rest are natural. So again, look at another factor, and we can think about the El Niños and El Niñas of the South Pacific. And if you remember the images on screen, they're always a plume where the heat starts and then it spreads out across the sea and creates these huge impacts to climate. Well, I won't disagree they create those huge impacts to climate, but I will disagree with the source. I believe the source is not human beings and greenhouse gases as such, but something quite different, undersea volcanics. And let me explain why. When the sunlight hits the surface of the ocean, 97% plus of the energy is reflected away. It doesn't get absorbed into the sea. That little bit, that less than 3% that gets absorbed as heat, stays at the surface because heat rises. If you put your body in the ocean just a couple feet down, you notice how quickly the temperatures drop because, simple rule of physics, heat rises and stays at the surface. It does not start at the base and appear as a plume. That's not how it works, unless it's a volcano venting under the sea. Then it looks just like a plume, because instead of just 3% of the energy being absorbed, 100% of that heat is absorbed in the ocean, and as it spreads with the currents, it spreads out and drifts across and looks just like a plume, just exactly like those satellite thermal images show. And most of these undersea volcanoes are not monitored. Over 600 were charted just in the South Pacific. Let me say that again. 600 undersea volcanoes in the South Pacific alone. And at any given time, a number of those are venting. And there's nobody monitoring it at all. And certainly they're not talking about it as a contributing factor to climate change. And I believe it is one of the single biggest contributing factors. The other is the solar cycle itself, the sun. You know, the sun, if you were actually look at the solar cycle and the temperature gradient of the planet over the last 100 years, in fact, now 120 years, because we've charted this and we've kept track of this historically. And what you see is a direct relationship. The charts go right together all the way through. And in fact, when you hit the beginning of World War II, and when you think about the beginning of World War II, the carbon footprint on the planet for man, I mean, we got the whole industrial revolution going on 50 years before, and then we have this explosion, literally, by the war effort of a huge, huge amount of growth. And you know that we added more particulate material to the atmosphere during that next 50 years than we ever did. And yet, if you look at the temperature gradient on the planet from approximately 1941 until the early 1980s, a 40-year stretch, you saw the temperatures declining and pollutants increasing. They diverged. They weren't together at all. The carbon footprint didn't line up with global temperatures at all. But the solar cycle did absolutely. There was before it became politically incorrect to talk about other causes for climate change, BBC did this excellent special where they charted it, and it's a direct correlation to solar activity affecting the temperatures on the planet. When you look at that activity over this long period of time, it becomes clear again that it is not human beings. If you look at the added energy that comes into the Earth and that is converted to mass within the Earth, because that's a basic equation, right? E equals mc squared. That energy comes in, a certain amount of energy leaves the planet, the rest is absorbed. It gets into the Earth and it begins to trigger lots of events that have nothing to do with human beings. In my lifetime, in 40 years, I've watched ice disappear from my state. I've watched the thing changed all over the world. And this is natural. This is not man-made. You're listening to Infowars.com. This is Dr. Nick Begich, and we'll be right back after these short messages.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
It's the claim that the August protest was some sort of left-wing plot. Who, you might ask, would say something so offensive? An elected representative who's serving right now in the U.S. Congress.
And look at the background. George Soros is one of those people that actually helps, back these individuals. Who is he?
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
Was it difficult?
Not at all.
Do you think George Soros funded the neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville?
Wouldn't it be interesting to find out?
These conspiracy theories were first spread by radio talk show host Alex Jones.
Is this lost on anyone? George Soros is a famous Nazi collaborator.
From the front lines of the information war, it's Alex Jones.
Our team is always looking for new ways to improve our products. That's why we've created the newest version of a fan-favorite formula, the Real Red Pill Plus. The Real Red Pill Plus contains the powerful pregnenolone formula, now with an added energy boost. Now, you can support your heart, brain, and aging process with an added natural energy boost. The proprietary energy blend includes powerful ingredients like green tea extract, yerba mate leaf extract, and more. Paired with the powerful ingredients in the original Real Red Pill formula, the Real Red Pill has just what you need to support your body while getting the pick-me-up to get you through the day. The Real Red Pill Plus is a powerful investment into the future of your mind and body. Don't miss out on the all-new upgrade to your favorite product. Head to InfoWarsStore.com and get the Real Red Pill Plus today. Real Red Pill Plus is on sale now while supplies last.